아니야! 내가 최 교수님 후임하기로 했다고! 최 교수님 어디 계세요? 내가?
Greetings from Bologna and the Future Film Festival. I am here, and I am also about to comment on the first film I've seen in this event. I'll Just Live in Bando by Yong-Sun Lee, a South Korean film about 85 minutes long in total length. Although it felt more akin to 2 hours, it really never ended. I don't particularly care about the style that it decided to go for. I can respect that decision, and it most certainly took a lot of work, since it's all hand-drawn animation, but the very specific aesthetic, or the very specific style of the camera, if you will, didn't lend itself well for animation, because there was a habit of the direction to essentially have the camera at a certain distance from the characters. Say, for example, you would have a reasonable distance, such as this, and then all of a sudden, whoop, a zoom in. And this happens basically all the time. Constantly moving. Constantly scintillating, if that's even the right word. And that looked weird. Again, because it was an animated film, as I mentioned before, hand-drawn animation. It's a stylistic choice. I believe it was conceived to give the film a certain dose of realism, and considering the themes it wants to go for, I can understand that choice, but considering the length the film goes to be as over-the-top as possible in the third act, it is ultimately counterproductive. And again, it doesn't really look good in animation. But regardless, what this film is about is hard to tell, because it seems to be about 2 different things entirely. It's decisively unfocused in that regard. The first half is about a man, a 45-year-old middle-aged part-time teacher at a university, whom is essentially struggling between what he wants to do, his passion for acting, and also his career, which is what he has to go for ultimately in order to sustain himself and his family. It is a relatable dilemma for many people, you know, having to balance their lives in between what they like and what they have to do in order to survive in a capitalist society. So that is ground for a good story. Unfortunately, then the film all of a sudden drops all that, and it begins the longest third act in the history of filmmaking. I can only describe it as such, and it has somehow to do with an old man with Alzheimer's syndrome, whom also happens to be a sexual harasser, whom is about to get sued by one of his students that he harassed and blackmailed, but the main character, the good guy, has to stop that from happening, because said Alzheimer-riddled man promised him a position in the teacher's board, which means a higher pay, which is the decision he had to go for, and lose his hopes to become an actor in order to get there, and it's all jumbled up. It's a jumbled up mess, as you can tell. I'm struggling to describe it as it happens. It's decisively a mess, and the first half tries to be about relatable issues, again, having to do with the conflict, the dichotomy between what you want to do, what are your dreams, versus the reality of it all. And the second half, which is basically the entire third act, and like I said, it never ends and it escalates to unnecessary degrees, is about topical issues relating sexual harassments. and all of that. And then the epilogue. After all that, the epilogue comes along, and the film ends on a weird body-shaming note. This is a bit of a bizarre film, and a horribly unfocused one. It is nicely drawn, nicely animated, but the stylistic choice that I mentioned before harms its solidity, and that third act is unbelievably tedious. Also, and this is a pet peeve not having to do with the film itself, whomever did the subtitles for this Korean film, I hope they don't do that for a living. That's all I'm going to say in that regard. Alright, so this has been Madhog Die Master, and I'm just about to go inside to watch the very anticipated Ankama Studios produced Matafakas. It is spelled as it is written, and vice versa, by the way. Until then.